Hello everybody, so I've just created a hoodie sewing pattern. I think it is probably the best sewing pattern I've created to date. Here is the sewing pattern right here. It is called the core hoodie pattern, and it is everything that I've looked at over years, everything that I've loved about hoodies that I've worn myself. I've put it into one sewing pattern which you can download on my website. And no matter what skill level you are, whether you have literally just started sewing and you have a machine like this, or you're a little bit more experienced and you're looking for a new hoodie pattern, you're going to come out the back end of this video with a finished hoodie. So before we jump into the actual tutorial, I just wanted to say I've been building my own sewing patterns. This is the hoodie. I have an array of so many different patterns that you can jump into also. I'm doing this because I really want to make sewing accessible for the younger generation and just anyone who is scared to pick up a machine and start sewing. All of these old sort of sewing patterns, they scare people away from sewing, and it makes it super hard for someone to actually want to just jump into making something that they want to actually create. So I guess the purpose of these sewing patterns are to genuinely make sewing accessible, and I'm here to break down sewing and sort of explain them techniques to you and make it as easy as possible for you to understand. So once more, whether you've got a machine like this or you are a little bit more experienced and you have a machine like mine, you are able to complete this hoodie. Just follow me step by step. I'm going to explain every single part of the process, and by the end you should have something looking a little bit like this. Before we jump into any of actually how to construct this hoodie, when you download the pattern it should look something like this. You should be able to print out A4 US letter, or you can just get a A0 full format piece of paper shipped to your door. This is a skill level 2 out of 5. All my sewing patterns have skill levels, so you're able to just jump right in where your skill level is and then get to sewing. This pattern is extra small, small, medium, large, XL, XXL, so it pretty much has the full size range. And on this first page, if you've printed correctly, you should be able to take a little tape measure and measure this 2 by 2 inch square right here, and then you know your pattern is to scale. When you open it up, it should have a contents page. You're going to have tools, materials and hardware, so I'm going to get onto that now. So with tools, materials and hardware, you obviously want to make sure that you've got the right tools, materials and hardware for the desired project. So stuff like tailor's chalk, pins, seam rippers, rulers, just all the normal sewing tools. For materials, I basically break down some recommended fabrics, so heavyweight loopback jerseys. This is the fabric I'm using. I'm using this French terry 500 GSM fabric. I'm going to link in the description the exact fabric, and I'm also going to link a few other different variants of fabric that you can use if you're struggling to find the right one. And then the next thing on the tools and materials list, it basically just has exactly how much material you'll need depending on the size you're making. The next page is your assembly guide. This is what all the pages underneath are going to look like when they're all stuck together. I'm not actually going to show you how to stick together all the pages because I've already done it over here. There is a proper tutorial on my website you'll be able to follow, and it will tell you exactly how to do this part of the process. I'm going to start this tutorial with a pre-cut out and stuck sewing pattern, but it basically just says, in short, make sure to print correctly, so 100% scale on your exact page, whether that's US letter or A4. It says separate the pattern pages and then just stick them together, and it basically shows you how to overlap them and stuff. Pattern basics, I do all my sewing patterns with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so 6 millimeters, and every single sewing pattern that I release has seam allowance included, so don't cut more fabric, it already has it included, so you can cut directly along the line of the paper. Measurements, I'm going to overlay the measurements on the screen here, but you can find your desired size that you want to cut out using this measurement table. I've cut an XL. I usually fit a large in hoodies, but I'm doing a double layered hoodie. The next thing, which is super important, is the pattern icon glossary. It basically just goes through every single icon that is on the patterns. You can read this and basically just know what everything is. The patterns are super straightforward. They're so easy to follow. However, if you are confused on things like notches, fold lines, cut to mirrored, you might as well read the pattern glossary because I'm not going to explain the terminology throughout this video. Turn over that page. This is where your pattern starts. And now you can head over to my website, stick all the pages together, come back, cut out your desired size, and from this point onwards is when the tutorial starts. Let's begin. I brought this fabric off Etsy. It is 500 GSM French terry, loop back kind of jersey stuff. I've been looking for hoodie fabric for a long time to try and find the right kind of stuff, but I came across this stuff. Again, I'm going to link it in the description. You can choose to go and buy it. Might take longer to ship to you depending on where you are in the world, but this is what I'm using. And I'm going to start with cutting out the fabric with my pattern pieces. Oh, also, before I actually start, I just wanted to say I got the French terry, and I've also, with that Etsy link that I've put in the description, they ship you free ribbing also. I don't exactly know how this ribbing's going to turn out. It feels quite flimsy, but I've also put a link below to get some really high quality ribbing also. So yeah, and sorry, one more thing. Pretty much this hoodie has modular pockets. I have chose to give you 3 different options of pockets, or maybe 4 different options. You can either use the classic hoodie pocket. I've also redesigned my sort of favorite type of hoodie pocket. So this is the Roughcut pocket, or you can use these vintage afterhood pockets, which are inspired from first ever hoodies put into existence. So it's kind of paying homage to that sort of vintage look. And then I also have all of these pockets, and they are different modular cargo pockets, which you can choose to put on the hoodie. On your front panel, you should have loads of markings within this front panel. Don't let it scare you. This is sort of a reference to where you could put these pockets, but you're welcome to do them wherever you want. When you get to the hood part of cutting out your fabric, you might be a little bit confused because this hood is the same size as your front and back panel. You should have cut your fabric out something like this. You can see that the darts should correspond with the line. Your darts should correspond with the line that you've just cut out. So I cut out this XL sizing, so the XL dart is right here, hidden in between the other sized darts. You basically just want to flip your pattern over and mark out exactly where that dart is. Just use a dissolvable pen or chalk or some form of fabric marker just to mark out exactly where them darts are, because we're going to sew them up. But I just thought I'd mention, mark your darts now.
Done. Let's do a responsive video for that. And I hadn't to the extract. Something was under duress right here.
So I'm cutting the pocket, and as you can see on the text on the pocket, if you're following along with me, it says cut 1 for simple pocket, cut 2 for double. So through this pattern, I am making a double lined hoodie. So just correspond what it tells you on there and cut 2 mirrored. You should be able to go to the pattern glossary and figure out what that means. So now we have cut 2 of these pockets. I'm going to pin all around this pocket. I'm going to leave the bottom, but I'm just going to pin all around this pocket. We're going to stitch it together and then turn it inside out, and it's going to be a super nice heavyweight pocket. And just a little reminder, when you're cutting the sleeve, when you get onto it, remember, because you've got 2 arms, they both need to be in aligned with the double if you're doing a double hoodie. So you're cutting 4 of them. You're cutting 2 for one arm, 2 for the other. So once you've finished cutting out all of your panel pieces, there's 2 things you can do. You can put your pattern itself. I use normal sewing pins, and I just pin all the pieces that correlate together and then hang it up on my pattern wall. And I guess that's a great thing because you can start building a collection of my sewing patterns, and then you always have them for next time. That is kind of the great thing with these Roughcut sewing patterns. You can either print a new one out and cut a different size, or you already have your desired size cut out ready to go. So now we should be left with these 2 pattern pieces, the cuff and the waistband. You only need to cut 1 of the waistband, you need to cut 2 of the cuff, and then you're folding it over. The waistband's going to obviously go around your waist. The cuffs are obviously going to go around your wrist. As I said, I'm not sure about whether the fabric I've got for this is actually going to be any good. They shipped me some free ribbing fabric, but it looks kind of flimsy and I don't have any other alternative to use. So, but yeah, you're basically just cutting out the cuff and the waistband out of whatever material you've chose to do for this ribbing part. Right, so now we're at the stage where we're going to start sewing all of this mess together. It's not as hard as you think at all. It does follow a lot of the same techniques as my other sewing tutorials if you have followed any of the jackets or anything previously. I'd say the hooded jacket pattern video is very similar to this. A lot of the same sort of sewing the side seam, sewing the hood, sewing all that, it all kind of works similar. And I also wanted to mention that if you're a total beginner at sewing and you literally don't know how to thread your machine, that is completely fine also. As long as you have patience with this project, then you will be able to complete it. I have a video right here which basically goes through how to set up, how to thread your machine, how to find fabrics, how to do everything all the way up to starting your first sewing project. And then I take you through your first sewing project so you're at a stage where you are able to tackle this hoodie. Right now, I'm going to tackle the pockets first. We have this front flat pocket, and we also have over here, I've put them to the side, the cargo pockets, which I'm going to add. The cargo pockets I will do secondary. I'm going to do the main kangaroo pouch pocket first. But this right here is my main kangaroo pouch pocket. What I'm going to do is I'm basically going to do my 1/4 seam allowance, and I'm going to stitch all the way around this pocket. I'm going to leave the bottom so I'm able to turn this pocket inside out, but I'm going to stitch all the way around with the 1/4 seam allowance, and then I'm going to turn it inside out, and then I'm going to top stitch this pocket. Make sure you're sewing these with the right facings facing each other. The loop back jersey fabric should be facing outwards. So this is my sewing machine. I use a Juki DDL 8700. It is a great machine. I've never needed to upgrade it. I've kind of gadgeted it out, so I've added little things like a removable sewing foot attachment onto the side, and I've also added some form of seam allowance sort of gauge, which normally you'd use these measurements next to your sewing foot, but I've just got one integrated into this sewing foot. So if you're seeing my overcomplicated machine and thinking that you might not be able to do this, then you will. I've just gadgeted mine out a little bit because why not? And there you go, you have your hoodie kangaroo pocket. This is the rough cut version. You can choose to do either of all the different pockets. I'm going to put this to the side for now, and we're going to start working on the cargo pockets. So you're probably looking at all this rubbish and thinking, what do I do here? It basically, if you split each one up into 3 different, things next to each other, you'll understand that this right here is the pocket flap, which folds over the pocket. This right here is the main outer part of the pocket, so this goes over the top. And then this right here is basically the band that runs all the way around the side of the pocket there. You sew them together, and then you should be able to make a cargo pocket. And we're going to do the same with the other side. So I'm going to show you here. I'm going to start off by grabbing the small pocket flap, and we're going to turn it inside out. Basically just fold it over so the loop back is facing upwards. And we're just going to stitch all around the edges, but just leaving this bottom area here. So we're going to stitch all around the edges, leaving this bottom bit here not stitched. This is again so we can turn it inside out. So now you've just completed this small pocket flap. You can throw that to the side, and we're going to grab this small pocket. This is this piece here. I have added seam allowance to this just because I want my pockets to be a little bit bigger, but don't let that confuse you. Essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to do a single fold at the top of the pocket. We're going to stitch that down So I'll show you. So I just folded over the top of that small pocket side panel piece, and I'm just going to place this with front facings so the fold you just made on the main panel matches up with the fold on the side piece. And now you're just going to stitch all the way around here. You're just going to move it along round until you get round to the other side. Just before you get to the end, unless you've done this already, I like to do it at the end when I'm near stitching it, just so you can make an exact fold just like that as to exactly where to stitch down that fold on the other side of the side piece. Now you can see if you turn this inside out, your pocket is starting to take shape. But what you want to do now is you just want to run a fold along this side piece, because this is what we're going to stitch down to the fabric and build this cargo pocket. You don't want to stitch down a loose edge. You literally just want to fold out that side piece just like that, and now you can see you have a clean edge on the side piece of your pocket. Now you can see that naturally your fabric wants to move in the way that you've sewn it down, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pinch together the side and the front, and then I'm going to run a top stitch all the way around this pocket. That right there is one of your finished cargo pockets. Now you can lay it down and you can see that the flap should fit over nicely, just like that. We're going to save this, put this to the side. You're just going to do the exact same thing for the other cargo pocket if you've chosen to do one. And then we're going to put both of them to the side and start sewing the hood of the hoodie. And then later on we'll get to how we actually attach these to the hoodie itself. Hello guys, little bit of a time jump. I just went and got some food, did a little pub quiz with a friend, and now I am back ready to get the hoodie done. Now we're looking at the front panel. What we basically are doing here is designing out what we want the front panel to look like. This is where you can add a few more little details. Now would be your time to add any sort of like labels, pockets, patches. So now we are reintroducing the kangaroo pocket. This is going to sit right there, and you can line this up, use a ruler, and when we found exactly where we want to place this pocket, we can pin it down and then stitch it. The two cargo pockets, and I'm actually going to put these just up here like that. Remember, when you're stitching this kangaroo pocket, you're not stitching this and you're not stitching this. You're just stitching up the line, doing a little bar tack back and forth stitch, and then your bar tack back and forth stitching up here, stitching along the top of the pocket, bar tack back and forth stitch, bar tack back and forth stitch there, and then all the way down to the bottom. This is because obviously you're putting your hands in the pocket, and then as far as these two cargo pockets, I will show you how to stitch them on after I have stitched my kangaroo pouch pocket on. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reintroduce these two cargo pockets, and I'm actually going to place these just right here. As I mentioned, these pockets are completely modular, so you can choose to put these wherever you want on the garment itself, and then we will move on to actually constructing the whole hoodie together. Now we just finished them cargo pockets, which we're going to tackle the hood now. I'm going to break down exactly how to do that. So So this right here is your hood panel. This might feel a little bit unfamiliar because, like I said, it's as big as the front panel and the back panel. You might be wondering why the hood is this big. Essentially, we have done the darts already, so you should have drawn out your 4 darts. You basically want to fold this in just like this, and then you want to stitch these together, and then basically turn it inside out, connect it up, and then sew your lines on the front of the hood. I'm going to take you through the process anyway. It is not that hard. We'll start with the darts. This just makes a seamless double layered hood. I'm assuming with this video that everybody, even if you are making a 1 layered hoodie, you're probably going to want the double layered hood just because it's nicer. It has more volume to it. So let's start off with sewing the darts, and then we will cut the excess, and then we will stitch together the hood, turn it inside out. I won't do any more explaining anymore. Let's just show you. As I mentioned, looking at it from the back side, you should have all these darts that you've placed. You basically just want to pinch these in, make sure that them lines line up, and you just want to stitch along these darts. You want to do the same here, pinch them in, stitch along the line. This basically just gives the hood a little bit more volume, and it makes it a little bit more baggier when you're wearing it.
Hey Raider, how's it going?
So now we have done the darts, I'm just facing the side where we've just stitched. We basically want to fold this inwards to make sure that your nice side of the fabric is facing your nice side. And then we just want to line up this curve. So the curves should line up. You can always throw pins in this to make it a little bit easier. Now what we're doing, we've just sewn these 2 curves, one here and one here. We've sewn our darts. Now we just want to make sure you're snipping any excess threads. It's just going to look cleaner when you finish the hoodie. And we're just going to basically turn this inside out. You can now see the 2 side seams you were stitching have become the middle seam in your hood. So when you match them up, wiggle it around a little bit, you can see that right there is your hood. So now I've turned this inside out, you can now see that you've just connected up them 2 curves that we have just stitched, now meet together and become the middle seam of the hoodie. If you just watch what I just did carefully, now you can turn it sideways and you can see that this curve we just stitched and the inside curve just in there we stitched as well. So this is now your hood. You can see the darts are in the perfect places inside and out. You can see that I've just thrown a pin to connect these 2 seams, folding any excess pieces of fabric the way they should be, just like that. And now what you want to do is you want to just make sure that it fits nice. And basically, if you plan on adding any type of toggle system or sort of, you know, any type of string, hoodie tightener, anything like that, now would be your time to do it before you stitch this to the garment or close this bottom opening up. For this, you can just stitch a line all the way down and stitch it all the way round, and this becomes your cinch channel. You can add a sort of eyelet here, and you can add another eyelet down the bottom here, and then run your string through, add your toggle stopper. But for the sake of this really heavy hoodie, I'm actually not going to add any sort of eyelet or hoodie string, just because I prefer it when it doesn't have that. But I am going to just stitch down this hood line just to clean it up a little bit. So I'm basically going to run a stitch all the way down here, and then I'm going to run a stitch all the way around the front of the hood, and then that is just going to clean it up a little bit. You can add pins along here. I'm just matching up the darts with pins just to clean this up. So you can now see the hood has really taken place, and I am very, very happy with how that looks. You can kind of throw this to the side right now. We'll focus on something else, and then we'll get back to adding the hood and the pockets we've just made, but for now, throw it to the side. You don't need it. So one more important thing to say here is that most hoodies you find out in the wild, whether you buy them, they always have overlocking on the insides, whether that is on the ribbing, on the cuffs, and that pretty much is this. And what that does, it just cleans up all your edges. It makes it so that your frayed edges don't become annoying when they go in the wash, they don't disintegrate. It's basically a structured stitch you add to your seams just to clean them up a little bit and so they last longer. But in instance of this, my overlocker, which is right there, has just broken. It broke about a few days ago, and it's quite typical because I'm doing a hoodie tutorial, which you obviously need to overlock all the edges. So I'm actually going to leave this raw for video purposes, but a good alternative is just to either use the overlock setting on your domestic machine, you can search that on YouTube, or just zigzag close all of the raw edges, but you shouldn't have any raw edges by the time we finish this tutorial. If you're doing a single layered hoodie, then you're going to probably want to overlock everything. So yeah, just zigzag it, or if you have an overlocker, overlock all the edges. So let's move on to the next step. So at this point we should have our kangaroo pouch that is completely sewn. We should have the 2 cargo pockets, and now would be the chance to add buttons to your 2 flaps, your 2 sort of flaps on your pockets. And it would also be the chance to add some patches. I was going to add some rough cut patches, I still might do, but I'm still deciding that. This is what you've got. So you've got your front piece, you've got your inner lining front piece, you've got both your back pieces over here, and you've also got all 4 of your arms. Basically the procedure is you are just sewing the whole front of the hoodie together. So you're sewing the back piece to the front of the hoodie, you're then sewing the arms onto that shell that you've just built, and then you're doing the exact same process for the lining. So I'm going to show you how to do it once for the outside of the hoodie. Just replicate the exact same thing on the inner lining. And then once we get to that stage, we are putting the ribbing on the bottom, and we're putting the cuffs on the arms, and then we're going to put the hood on top. And then it's pretty much completed. So let's start off with just putting the back panel onto the front panel. Front panel, we basically just want to grab one of our back pieces. If you're using the same fabric, maybe sometimes you could be using a different fabric where your lining could be cut out of something different. You want to make sure you're grabbing the right pieces then. But right now we're using the same fabric, so I'm just going to grab one of my back pieces, and I'm basically just going to lay it over front facing over the top of my front piece. And now you can kind of see when I do that, we want to make sure that our good sides are facing each other, and then you essentially just want to pin around this. When you're pinning around this, you want to make sure that you're leaving your armholes completely open, and you want to also make sure that you're leaving your neckline completely open. So the things that we are going to pin right now, they're going to be the side seam, the shoulder seam, the other shoulder seam, and then we're also going to pin the other side seam. And then once they're pinned, we're basically going to stitch them, and then we're going to clean this stitch up with turning it inside out and just hitting everything with a top stitch. This is going to close up the whole shell of the hoodie, and you'll start to see that it's sort of making a shape now. I'm going to do the inner lining whilst I'm doing this because it just speeds up the process a little bit. You can choose to do the same. When you're sewing your inner lining, you've got your back piece, you've got your front piece, you're doing the exact same thing, but the difference is this front panel will have your kangaroo pouch and your cargo pockets on, and then these that you're about to pin together don't, because they're your lining. That is your outer shell, this is your inner lining. So I'm going to move them together because they're things we need to sew. And I'm going to just bring the sleeves over and just show you what I'm going to do now. You could do this after and wait to do it after, but I think I'm actually going to do this right now. I'm just going to split up two of the sleeves. I'm going to lay this out, and you can see that if I fold this over and connect the side seam together, then it makes my sleeve. This is essentially what your sleeve is going to look like, and I'm just going to pin all the way along this, and I'm going to do this with all 4 panels so I have them ready for when I take all my pattern pieces over to the sewing machine. I'm doing this so it saves time, but I think one thing with sewing, when I find a project that I'm doing, i.e. something like a jacket that I'm making for Roughcut, I'm only making one of them. When I'm only making one of them, I'm only having to focus on the thing that I'm doing currently at that time, whether that's sort of designing pockets, or maybe I'm just sort of like doing sashiko on the arms, so I'm taking things super slowly. But with something like this hoodie, all of the pattern pieces are pretty much the same. I do rarely work with like raw fabrics that don't have prints on and stuff like that. So I'm sort of just going to smash it out all together. And it is a lot of the same steps, which are quite tedious. So I know that they are all going to be the same. And once you know how to do one of them, you can do 4 the same. So you've got 4 sleeves. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pin along this side seam, follow my lead. So I've just pinned everything. As you can see here, this is all of the pattern pieces ready to be sewn on the sewing machine. Essentially, what you're doing now is you're basically hitting everything that you've just pinned with a 1/4 seam allowance. And then after you've hit it with a 1/4 seam allowance, you're just top stitching everything. So the insides of the sleeves, the side seams, the shoulder seams, you're pretty much just sewing everything and then doing a top stitch. I'm going to show you on film what this is, but I'm guessing you have enough understanding to know that when you make a seam, you're just doing a top stitch. If not, I'm going to show you. So this is just a little technique I wanted to mention whilst I'm sewing. Instead of just going to, say you were doing this side seam right here, and then you were sewing from the start all the way to the end, and then you just cut your thread and then reposition your machine to do the next shoulder seam, and then you cut your thread, reposition the machine to do the next shoulder seam, cut your thread. It's like kind of a long process. So what I tend to do is I'll sew the shoulder seam, and then I will just position my next bit of fabric so I can sew straight onto it. You should be left with a little bit of fabric like this, and then you can just snip that after. It's just means that you can constantly sew. So you're just constantly sewing. As soon as you get to the end of one of your seams, just place your next bit of fabric in front of the sewing foot, carry on sewing, and then you can just snip that bit of thread afterwards. It's just a little tip I guess I'm going to mention, because it speeds up my process by quite a long time. I guess if you're more experienced, you probably already do this, but if you're a beginner or intermediate and you just didn't know that, then there we go. So I'm going to give you a very quick explanation of what a top stitch is. If you're a bit confused, you can go find another video, but essentially what it is, I have basically just stitched together this seam right here. Yours should look the same. This is the side seam of the body pieces, and now I've basically turned it the right way up, and you can see that this sort of seam is looking quite bulky. You can kind of flatten your seams by folding that underneath. So you're basically folding the excess fabric from what you have sewn to one side, and then you're stitching on the top of it, and this stitch is going to run through all 3 layers, the one on top and the 2 excess bits of fabric below, and this is going to create a top stitch.
Oh my god.
So, top stitching the arms arms is a little bit more tricky because as you get further into your stitch, the armhole closes up a little bit more because you're going from the shoulder all the way down to your cuffs. This is just an issue that I don't think anyone has solved. It is always going to be long. So remember, you're doing 2 arms for one side and 2 arms for the other, which means that when you're doing your top stitch, you need to do 2 top stitches one way and 2 top stitches the other. This is because when you match them up to your body, they're actually going to make sense because you can match the top stitches so they're running the same way, if that makes sense. I now have all my arms top stitched. This is everything facing the same way. This is the same panel times 4, but what differentiates them, like I mentioned just a minute ago, is if you pull 2 one way and 2 the other, to get the consistency in the top stitching, you basically want to top stitch 2 the same way with the top stitch facing the same way, and then when you get onto the next 2 sleeves, because you've got to imagine there's 2 for each arm, 1 for that arm, 1 for that arm, you do the first 2 one way and then you do the second 2 sleeves top stitching. Just flip that bottom bit of excess fabric the other way, top stitch the other way. This basically just is a design detail. It's just for making sure it's perfect. It just means that the top stitching lines up when you get to attaching them to the body. It's now like 2 AM in the studio. I caught up with some friends earlier and it's got a little bit later than I expected. So if I'd have started this at like 11, 12 o'clock, then we would have had it finished in one day. This should be a one-day project. So I'm not setting a good example. However, I've got the whole of tomorrow to do this too, so I'm going to get through a little bit more, but whenever I stop, it'll be a quick jump for you, but it'll be a full sleep for me. So let's, I guess, carry on. No, I'm going to leave it. Let's do it tomorrow. Hello everyone. So it is a brand new day, as you can see on the window. I've got my coffee, trying not to spill it over my white fabric, but I'm really excited to finish this. I was thinking about it and I've never actually made myself like a 1000 GSM hoodie, so I'm very excited to finish this because I will definitely wear it all the way through the winter. You'll see me wear it in my videos, stuff like that. Before I left last night, I pretty much laid all the pieces down, made sure I knew what it looked like when it was put together, and I'm very, very happy with what it does look like. Let's start back on the tutorial and try and get this done before early afternoon. Oh yeah, and before we actually start the tutorial, I just wanted to interject and say that this code right here will get you 50% off the pattern. There is 10 uses of this code available, no more after that. This is just like an exclusive little hard-coded segment, first come, first serve of this video because you've watched this far through the video so far. Go to the website, put the code in, download the hoodie pattern. It will be £10 instead of 20, and there is only 10 codes available. Once 10 of you use them, they'll be completely gone. So I've just laid out all my pieces. You should have your outside body panels, you should have your 2 outside sleeves, and then your hood. Basically, we're going to attach the arms first, and then we're going to attach the hood after, and then we're going to do the exact same thing with the lining fabrics, but we're not going to attach the hood to the lining fabric. You're basically going to sew this together so it makes a hoodie, and then we're going to tackle the lining after, because you have to sort of sew the hood in a specific way to make it all work. So for now, let's just sew the arms together onto the body piece. How are we going to attach the arms? So I'm going to show you how to attach the arms. Basically, move the hood to the side for now. Remember, you can do that in a second. And basically, you should be left with these 3 panels here. What you want to do is you want to line up the direction of your top stitch with the sleeve that has the exact same direction. So as you can see, I top stitch both the sleeve and the side panel the same direction there. You can check with your other side whether it lines up the same, which it does perfectly there. And what you want to do is you want to put one sleeve to the side, make sure it's the correct sleeve for the correct side. We're just going to turn this body panel inside out. And what we're going to do is we're just going to insert our sleeve with the front facings. Just insert the sleeve into there. Once you've inserted your sleeve in, make sure you're doing it on the correct side. When you turn it inside out, you might get a little bit confused. the side seam of your body panels and then the bottom seam of your arm should match up perfectly. And remember, you're doing this with the bigger hole and obviously not the smaller hole, because the smaller hole in your sleeve is your cuff. Your bigger hole is obviously your armhole. So you want to insert this sleeve right here into the correct side. Once you've matched that up, you slowly just want to work your way round, and it should just match up perfectly as you're going around the hoodie. You want to throw pins all the way around this, and then you just want to slowly work your way around this armhole until it's fully pinned, and then we're just going to throw a stitch all the way around this with our 1/4 seam allowance. Also, just a little tip, if you get about halfway to pinning, or say you get a little bit further than halfway and one panel seems to have a little bit more fabric than the other, it is definitely how much you have pinned, and watch out for all of the puckering and sort of bunching of fabric. Make sure you're pinning it really equal all the way around. Gio and I, my co-designer, we double check all of the patterns and make sure that the measurements like 100% line up. Remember, with hoodie fabric, you're using jersey and stretch fabric, so this sort of thing can happen really easily. As you can see here, you just want to pull it to be equal, and it should line up perfectly. When you're doing this with something like canvas or denim, it can be a lot easier because that fabric is not very stretchy, so it all lines up perfectly. But when you're doing it with hoodie fabric, this technique here of just pinning around the armhole, it can be a little bit annoying sometimes. So just like that, you've pinned round your armhole, and now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch this all together. One more little pro tip, when you're actually sewing round this, remember there's going to be a lot of fabric on your left. Sometimes the fabric accidentally just bunches up and then you end up sewing over like 3 layers of fabric. You want that not to happen. As you can see here, if I just made a straight stitch along here, you can see that there is a little bit of folded fabric under there. As you're slowly going along and sewing this, you basically just want to be moving and pulling the fabric away, so you're only sewing through your 2 layers. So once you've sewn all around this armhole, what you want to do is you could either do the exact same with the other sleeve now, but what I'm going to do just for video's sake is we're just going to turn this inside out once more, just so you can visually see what's going on here. Top stitch is lined up on the side seam, and you can now see that we have a sleeve. Just to sort of clean this sleeve up, you can see we've added a top stitch to the shoulder, to the side seam, so it's probably only right that we add a top stitch all the way around this hoodie. So this is going to be a little bit complex to do because you're going to have to put all of this excess fabric under your sewing foot and then tackle the top stitch and slowly take it round, remembering that fabric can bunch up under the sewing foot and then you might accidentally sew over like 3 layers of fabric. So just take this super slow, and then once you have top stitched this sleeve, once you have top stitched that sleeve, although it's tedious, you've got to do it another 3 times. It can take a little bit long. I think this is why sort of double layered hoodies aren't really the thing that people teach you first off, but all this stuff just makes you a better designer, because obviously, like, when you keep doing techniques over and over again, it's only going to clean up your craft. Let's see how clean we can make it, you know? You're always making your next one cleaner than your last. As tedious as it is, you've got to do it another 3 times. It's good to note this now before you go any further and it happens again. When you're top stitching all around this armhole, make sure you're just always pulling the fabric out, just like I just said. The main thing with why this is so tedious is because you might accidentally sew over a bit of fabric which has accidentally gone under the sewing foot. So you basically just want to make sure that all your fabric is out the way and you're only sewing this top stitch. I can feel other bits of fabric under there like this right now, that just as you're working your way around accidentally just gets caught underneath your top stitch, and if it does, then you're going to end up probably having to get your seam ripper or your blades out, sort of cutting the fabric. It just makes the quality of your final piece a little bit worse than it could be if you took it slow. So just make sure with your top stitching around your armhole, you're just being super, super careful. And then it should be all good. And now, just as you can see here, you have your first perfect sleeve. Just as you can see here, top stitched around this arm, and now you're doing the exact same procedure for the other side. See, even I make this same mistake that I just spoke to you about. If you feel like sometimes there is a little bit more fabric on one of the sides, it is mainly just due to how you've pinned it. And, you know, here, for example, I have a bit of fabric which is bunched up. Again, I feel like that is quite a rookie mistake that I think a lot of people make regardless of your skill level. But you've just got to take the pinning, the armhole, really slow. If you end up having something like this, where one side is longer than the other, you just want to unpin, take it slow, repin, it will fit. The only other reason why it wouldn't fit is if you haven't done the seam allowances correct when sewing the whole garment.
Document the farmer's hobbies, document the farmer's family.
Now we have just top stitched all of the arm sleeves down to the armholes with the inside and the outside, and this is really starting to take place now. We're at the stage now where we've done all of the sleeves. I actually decided to put them extra after hood vintage inspired pockets on the inside because it is going to be reversible, so I might as well show you how the modular pockets work, where you don't have to do them in any way that I just done them there. The reason I made it so the pockets are modular is because I want you guys to sort of like use your own creativity and you know, understand that when you go off on your own sort of route, you end up creating something amazing. You know, you might want to just design your own pocket completely. It kind of gives you an understanding that they can be different shapes. They don't have to be that sort of normal kangaroo style pocket. As far as the patches that I've just put on the hoodie too, they will be available on my website soon. So you'll be able to go on there, buy some patches to add to your rough cut projects. It is something that I've done before. I didn't do it very well just because of the system that I had in place at the time. But this time, this January, so within like 2 months' time, I'm going to redrop them and there'll be loads on the website, all different styles, and you can purchase them along with your patterns and make some really cool rough cut inspired pieces. So yeah. Now you're tackling the ribbing and the cuffs, and I think this could probably be the most confusing bit of this process. If you're doing a single layered hoodie, then you don't need to do it the way that I'm doing it. You can just attach the ribbing and the cuffs by overlocking it into the wrist holes and the waist hole. But if you are doing a double layered hoodie, I think this kind of teeters it over the edge from a level 2, which it currently is, over to a level 3. So I've made all of these different patterns with skill levels based off the techniques that I feel they use, and they jump kind of into different territories. And what we're about to do, I think, could potentially confuse a lot of people. So I'm going to try and do it with 2 cameras. I'm going to keep one on my head POV the whole time, showcasing exactly what I'm doing, talking through the process. And I'm also going to keep a camera above, so I'm able to switch between the 2 and you can see exactly what I'm doing. But make sure to keep rewinding this if you get confused. I'm going to try and explain stuff to the best of my ability. As far as the ribbing and the cuffs, I think it is the most tricky part. So we're going to tackle it now together, and then we'll move on to the hood. And once you've sewn the hood in, you have a finished hoodie. So I'd say we're about 75% of the way there at the moment. You've got your lining panel and you've also got your main panel here. Now, what we need to basically understand with this is where the ribbing is going to go on, obviously, this big bottom hole, and then the arms are going to have ribbing. But we're going to do this so it's kind of seamless. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to grab our ribbing wherever it is. It does have an indication of how big you need to cut this ribbing. You basically want to fold it and you want to stitch it together. Run a stitch through this. And you want to double check that when you're actually stitching this down, you're stitching, making sure it's inside out. So when you actually fold it the normal way, that's kind of what it looks like. You should be able to tell when you're working with your ribbing, which side is the right side and which side is the wrong side, but some ribbing it doesn't necessarily matter. So now we've got our ribbing. What you want to do is you basically want to match this little seam that you've done here, and you want to match that to the side seam. And what we're going to do is we're going to move one of these out the way for now. So we'll move the lining out the way. Basically just open this up and put it into that. And you want to match it up with the bottom. So it's looking something a little bit like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab some pins. And you don't need to pin all the way round because it might get tedious. And we're going to work our way round and pin. But remember, your ribbing is going to be shorter than the actual width of your bottom waist opening. This is because when you actually wear the hoodie, it cinches in at the bottom. So when you're adding these pins, account for the fact that it's going to stretch. So when you're adding these pins, just keep stretching it, adding the pins, stretching it, adding the pins, and this can again get a bit tedious, but take it slow. Right now we have just added the ribbing to the bottom of the hoodie. You can sort of stretch it out and feel that when it falls back, as long as you've cut the correct amount for your size, it has that, you know, that bagginess sort of to it where it sort of cinches in at the bottom, which is exactly what ribbing should do. Before we move on to actually attaching all of the lining to the ribbing and then turning it inside out and doing the cuffs, we're going to focus just on this neckline right now. We're going to focus on actually putting the hood and attaching the hood to the inside so that when we attach all of the lining after, it's a lot easier. Essentially, if I was to do the hood when all the lining was attached to the hoodie, there's a lot more fabric, a lot more bulk, and it makes it a little bit trickier for us to actually construct this whole thing out. So I'm going to attach the hood now, and then we're going to move on to attaching the lining and doing all that sort of thing. The hood works very similar to the way that you did the armholes. You basically want to turn it inside out. Make sure that you know which side is your front and which side is your back. You'll be able to tell with the risen sort of neckline, that is your back. Then the dropped neckline is your front. We can measure across. We can measure 5 inches right there. We don't need to do the exact same thing with the hood because we've already got that middle seam right there. So what you want to do, you want to connect that middle seam up, and then we basically want to pin that middle seam of your hood. Make sure you're not pinning and getting confused with one of the darts. Make sure you're pinning that middle seam to where you've just marked the middle point of the back neck line. Then the same as what we did before for the armhole, you can just thread all of this excess fabric through, and you're just slowly working your way with your pins, making sure you're not pulling on the fabric. You're working your way around this neckline. Right, so let's get on to attaching the lining to the hoodie. We've just sewn the hood. It should look really, really nice if you've done it the correct way. I don't see why you wouldn't have. But yeah, let's move on to the ribbing. We're basically attaching this ribbing here to your lining section. So then when you turn it inside out, it should be nice and easy for you to have a seamless hoodie. And then what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to put all of this front panel inside this lining right here. But make sure when you're doing this, remember you know which bit is your front and which bit is your back of your lining, vice versa with your outer shell too. And then hold the side seams of your hoodie. You should be able to drop it in just like that. And then you're just doing the exact same thing where you're closing up that waist hole the same way we did the armholes. Remember, you're using ribbing now, so you kind of need to stretch that ribbing along. Just make sure you're being careful pinning, and then you're stitching it all the way round from the inside. Seam that we did earlier, connect that up to the side seam of your inner lining. Make sure again you're double checking the fact that your front facings are facing each other. You want to make sure that the front of your lining is facing your other front of your outer shell when you're pinning this together, because if you get this wrong, your hoodie is going to be back to front, so you need to make sure that this is correct. The reason we have done it that way, where we have just sewn it all inside out, is because now what you want to do is you want to pull the inside, connects right up perfectly at the ribbing there. Now what we're going to do is we're basically going to do the exact same thing for the arms. You want to grab your cuff. This is mine. We're going to sew this together the same way we did with the waist. So you're just folding over the front facings and then you're stitching. And then when I'm at that point, I'll show you what we're doing. You want to make sure you have now laid out basically your hoodie inside out, so the fronts are facing down. You can see the ribbing is now attached. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that there is no kind of like twist in the arms on either side. These arms always stay with this seam traveling all the way down, all the way up, and then all the way to the wrist. Now we've sewn that together the same as our ribbing of our waist, is we want to turn it inside out, just like that. And you can see that there is your cuff. What we're going to do now is we're going to match up the seam of your ribbing, so that little seam there. We're going to match that up with one of these sleeves, and we're just going to place it inside. And again, remember the front facings, and we're just going to match up the top stitch, and we're going to match up the wrist, sort of bottom wrist seam, with the seam on the ribbing. And then again, we're going to stitch all the way around this. I don't tend to use pins for this because I don't really think you need it, because it's quite a small hole opening. I'm just going to make sure that that seam is matched up there, and then just throw a stitch all the way around. This bit is a bit fiddly, so take it slow. Considering that there is no twists or turns in this right here, what you want to do, you basically want to flip the cuff outwards, just like that, and match the seam to the cuff seam again, just like that, and you want to add a pin right there. As I mentioned, you are starting the stitch on that seam, but again, triple check that you don't have any twists and turns in the fabric. We're going to do this once more to the other side of the sleeves, and then you'll be able to turn it inside out and it should be seamless. It is a bit of an awkward technique, but once you get it down and master it a few times, you'll know exactly what you're doing. I still get confused about it now sometimes, but you just want to hold the ribbing elasticated so it fits flush into the sleeve, and then just stitch round. And this is basically how you make a seamless hoodie, and the same process applies to some of my other tutorials, i.e. the jacket and little things like that. So we're going to do the exact same technique now to these sleeves down here. I'm not going to talk, I'm just going to show you and film it POV so you're able to see what I'm doing. But again, make sure that nothing twists and turns, that seam stays consistent all the way through. And then, yeah, just add the ribbing. And then afterwards, we're going to turn it inside out. And I'm going to show you the last step, which is attaching the hood so it all matches perfectly. And it should, at the end, make a fully reversible, perfect 1000 GSM hoodie. Let's do it.
That's a big up Fred Irie.
So I fully turned this inside out and it's ended up the way of the inside version of the hoodie, which is exactly what we want. You can see here that the hoodie does not attach. So I'm going to show you a trick now to make this reversible. So what I'm essentially going to do is I'm going to grab some pins again, and you should have something that looks a little bit like this. You've got this stitch line here, which is essentially the stitch line which you made to attach your hood to the neckline of your hoodie. What we're going to do with this outer fabric that has this raw edge is we're essentially going to do a slight fold, and then we're going to place this just above where that stitch line is. So you see there's a stitch line all along here. You just want to place this fold slightly above where that stitch line is. And then you want to throw a pin. Make sure to not be pinning through the back of the hoodie. You're just pinning through these layers here. And then you want to follow all the way around the hoodie. Fold, place right above that stitch line. Make sure to throw a pin in here as well. And slowly just work through this whole process here. So now we've just pinned all around that neckline. You can see if you've done it correctly and lined it up right above that stitch, all your pins should be perfectly under this seam here. So now what we're going to do, I was going to show you how to stitch in the ditch, but I do feel like that is maybe a little bit more complex and maybe would push on to the level 3 skill level. So I'm actually just going to show you that you just stitch all along here now, all the way around, and then it's completed. And pinning and all that sort of thing, they can come across tedious. You wouldn't have to do any of that if you were making a single layered hoodie, but we're making a double layered hoodie. So now this is pretty much done. Let's just stitch around here and then I'll show you the final result. And just like that, we now have a finished hoodie. I'm going to try it on for you guys now. I am so happy with this. It looks crazy. The 1000 GSM Roughcut pattern hoodie. Let me look in the mirror again. Yeah, I am incredibly happy with this. I think it couldn't have came out any more perfect, and this is insane. I'm going to get some B-roll shots of it running over this sort of clip on the table with my phone. But yeah, I'm incredibly happy with how this pattern has turned out. You got the rough cut pocket on one side, you got the vintage after hood pockets on the other, which is insane. Reversible rough cut hoodie. I kind of take back what I said about cutting the size up if you're double layering. This is a little bit too big for me, so I'd recommend doing true to size, whether you're single layering or double layering your hoodie. because it kind of fits naturally oversized anyway. And there we have it, the final rough cut hoodie pattern completed. I am insanely happy with this. I think a hoodie pattern is something that you kind of release first if you're doing patterns, because it's such a universal item of clothing. But I've kind of waited. I have so many other different patterns that are already on my website. I've kind of waited until later to do a hoodie pattern because I wanted to focus on like the fit and make sure the pattern was exactly how I wanted it. It's graded from extra small all the way up to 3XL, so it's super inclusive. I hope you've got to the end of the video and you've completed yours and you're reflecting on it and you just gas because you finished it and created it. This is a level 2 in difficulty. I think it kind of pushes up into the level 3 difficulty if you're doing a double layered version, but I've still named it a level 2 because I think that if you can follow the tutorial correctly, understand what I'm sort of, you know, showcasing you, then anybody is able to create this piece of clothing. This perfectly sort of trickles you into getting into my other pieces of clothing. I have the pillar jacket, which is a perfect denim jacket. I have the hooded jacket, the origin jacket it's called. And then all my other patterns, there's bags, there's hats, there's so many other different ones. Thank you for watching this far through the video. If you haven't decided to make this hoodie yet and you're still deciding whether you think you can do it, here is another few codes which will get you 25% off. Once they're used up, they'll never be able to be used again. Very much appreciate you watching. This pattern is $19.99 if you're watching this too late for the codes. The link is in the description for the pattern. You should go and check out all my other patterns. It is myself and my co-designer Gio working on everything. So it's a super small team of 2 people. We're like an indie pattern company at its early stages. We're 1 year into making patterns. I am about 10 years into making clothing. If you're new here in Roughcut, I do many other different fun things, like I create cool sewing machine tables, or I make really cool patchwork denim and sashiko items, or printed items I've sewn in different countries. I'm always creating. And I feel like the patterns are super valuable because they help you guys. I've kind of realized that the story is deeper than myself. Watching you guys finish these garments is as rewarding as me finishing my own garments. If you have ended up creating this hoodie, I want to see what you've created. So drop me a message on Instagram, Roughcut Official. Send me your creation. I'll repost it in videos. I'll put it on my website. It is amazing to see. So I'll stop rambling. However, go check out my other level 3 patterns and move on to another pattern that works for you. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. See you in a bit.